Stop right there, citizen. Name me 5 to 7 Robins in quick succession. If you can't do that, why are you trying to give such confounded opinions on the internet? Oh bro, this video though isn't about telling people that they're stupid for liking a character or for having an opinion. Comics are meant to be argued about. That's half the fun, half the reason why we're all still here, talking about characters who've existed longer than most of us have been alive. But there is a difference between interpretation and a take that fundamentally misunderstands what the story is actually doing or who the characters actually are. Some comic takes don't even just miss the point, they flatten these characters. They turn layered, flawed, interesting people into archetypes, into power scaling charts, into symbols, into doing things that they would do if they were in their shoes. I'm telling you, these guys are not you, and that's what makes them interesting, right? Yeah, it might be easier if they do something this way, but the reason why there's a story that's interesting is because they do something unorthodox. And once those takes take over the conversation, it becomes harder to talk about writing, themes, and just characterization in any meaningful way. So today I want to talk about some of the worst takes in comics, and I'm going to say it up front, what the take is, then we're going to break it down, why people believe it, and then why it falls apart once you actually look at it through the text. And if you disagree, that's fine. If you think a weakness is a strength or vice versa, even better. This is all in good fun. I just like talking about these things. And the first character we have to talk about, the guy who gets slandered the most, mainly because he is on the top of the leaderboard every single month. Either 4 or 6 out of the top 10 titles of comics are from Batman. People hate him because they're not on his side, and honestly, once you become a Batman fan, you start to realize that more things open up and you could just never lose, like you're always being fed. But the first take here is Bruce Wayne should just use more of his money instead of being Batman. This is one of the more repeated bad Batman takes on the internet, and it survives almost entirely because people don't actually read comics and they just repeat what the other person says. This argument usually goes something like this: Batman is just a rich guy, he beats up poor people, and if he actually cared about Gotham, he would stop playing dress up and just fund social programs instead. The problem is that Bruce Wayne already does that constantly. Bruce Wayne is canonically one of the most aggressive philanthropists in DC Comics and just comics in general. Through the Wayne Foundation, he funds free medical clinics, rehabilitation programs, urban reconstruction projects, victim compensation, education, and disaster relief, not just in Gotham, but internationally. This isn't subtle either. It's stated on panel over and over again. Batman doesn't ignore systemic problems. He attacks them from every angle available to him, whether it's through philanthropy or being a vigilante. And here's the part that people miss. Money alone does not stop organized crime, super terrorists, or costume mass murderers. Gotham isn't broken because it lacks funding. Gotham is broken because it's infested with mob families, corrupt officials, terrorist cults, international assassins, and supervillains who somehow have military-grade resources, okay? Bruce Wayne, with a checkbook, would get assassinated. Like, what are we trying to talk about here? Batman creates fear, and fear is what disrupts those criminal ecosystems. He doesn't replace philanthropy, he supplements it, because Gotham's problems are not solvable by economics alone. Batman beats up poor people. What a take. This take really falls apart the second you look at who Batman actually fights. Like, most of his enemies are either wealthy crime lords like Falcone, Maroni, Penguin, Black Mass, corporate elites, terrorist organizations like the League of Assassins, as I mentioned before, or supervillains with crazy, absurd resources. Mr. Freeze's suit alone is powered by diamonds. This man is big balling, and we're having a problem about Batman beating up poor people. Even when Batman fights street-level criminals, they're not desperate people stealing bread. They're murderers, they're rapists, they're kidnappers, human traffickers, right? These are the people that Batman is taking down. Listen to the dialogue in literally any Arkham game. These people brag about atrocities, and even if they don't brag about atrocities, they talk about it as if it's another day of the week, like it's just another Tuesday. They're perpetrators of violence, okay? Batman doesn't brutalize for fun. Bruce has outright stated in an internal monologue he does not enjoy hurting people. He does it because force is sometimes the only language violent criminals can understand. He often tries to avoid violence through intimidation, interrogation, and psychological pressure first. If brutality was the point, he wouldn't bother, right? He's not some sadist who gets off on violence. It's explicitly contradicted by the text. Batman is not too brutal. This is where people confuse Bruce Wayne with Jean-Paul Valley. During Nightfall, when Batman is replaced by Jean, he takes over the mantle, and he's excessively brutal and unstable. They go out of their way to show you the difference. Tim Drake is actively disturbed by his methods. He even says that Jean-Paul uses pain, while Bruce Wayne uses fear. Bruce Wayne is restrained. Bruce Wayne has limits and he knows when to stop. A lot of people are brain rotted from the Arkham games because in the Arkham games, if you beat up criminals, I'm gonna be honest, people would die. Like the way he punches people when they go flying to the wall and they break their arms and stuff like that, he would kill people definitely if we went by normal people body rules in, real life, right? If we applied that version of Batman to the comics. So in the comics, he goes for efficiency. You see him usually do 1 or 2 punches and then they're down, hitting nerve points, pressure points. He's not trying to take too long. He's using moves that will quicken the battle. If Batman was truly the monster that people claim he is, DC wouldn't need an entire storyline to show what happens when somebody actually crosses that line. And the last take is Batman's no-kill rule is stupid. This is where the discourse completely loses the plot, and it's the most, verbatimly stated all across the internet thing that I could point out to. Batman's no-kill rule is not about if I kill once, I will never stop. It's not about a technicality, and it's not about a loophole. It's about the sanctity of human life. Bruce believes people can be rehabilitated because he was. Robin isn't just a sidekick. Robin is proof. Proof that Bruce Wayne could have become something worse and didn't. Under Grant Morrison and his interpretation, Bruce even remembers a darker past, one where he crossed lines earlier in his career, right? He had a gun as Batman in the 1939 storyline, and he remembers this. Whether it's literal canon or a psychological memory, that doesn't matter. What matters is that Bruce once believed it, and Robin was the thing that pulled him back from the edge. Here's the uncomfortable truth that a lot of people like to avoid. Many of Batman's villains have reformed. Harley Quinn, Two-Face, temporarily, Catwoman, Poison Ivy, even the Joker has helped save the world multiple times. It has also been shown that Joker's mind can be repaired. Martian Manhunter has done it, the Lazarus Pit has done it, and gave him remorse for everything that he's ever done. There is a version of the Joker that can be saved. Batman doesn't kill because once he does it, he'll no longer fight crime. He's passing judgment. That's why every time he comes close, like in Hush or Death of the Family, it's his allies who stop him, not because he's weak, but because killing would permanently damage his soul. He's human, just like the rest of us. There is going to be moments where he gets pushed over the edge, but because Batman is this moral icon, this beacon of hope for Gotham, he can't let himself go down to that place. Let's keep that same energy for Spider-Man. This is where the hypocrisy shows up. People love saying Spider-Man doesn't have a no-kill rule because he said that he would kill somebody before. Newsflash, Batman has, Superman has, Wonder Woman, Daredevil, even Tim Drake. Moments of weakness are not character definitions. Spider-Man has never crossed that line willingly, even when Green Goblin murdered his own child. Neither has Batman. If you're going to hold Batman to this standard, you better apply it universally or admit that you're just selectively hating. Spread love, like literally. At this point, you better be a hater for every single character that doesn't kill their villains. Hell, even be a hater for Punisher. He doesn't kill a lot of his villains too. Or they just come back. Let's just move over to Spider-Man and take number 5. Good transition, huh? It really wasn't, but this take is Spider-Man is an unbeatable street tier. Spider-Man is absolutely the strongest traditional street level hero. Like that part is not up for debate, but people exaggerate him into an Avengers level threat and then get mad when stories don't support that version of him. Yes, Peter Parker is incredibly strong. Yes, his spider sense is like borderline broken, let's be honest, but it's not perfect. Peter has been tagged by normal human assassins before. He's been pressured and had paws put on him by Daredevil. He's been overwhelmed by coordinated street level fighters. His biggest weakness isn't power, it's his psychology. In character, Peter pulls his punches, he hesitates, he second guesses himself, he cracks jokes to diffuse tension because he's afraid of what happens if he takes things too seriously. When Spider-Man is locked in, most street tier characters are in serious trouble, but that is not how Spider-Man operates most of the time. Yes, he's powerful, he's not untouchable, and pretending otherwise ignores the very traits that make him interesting. Gwen Stacy over Mary Jane. This one is almost entirely revisionist history. So for decades, Gwen Stacy's role in Spider-Man comics was extremely simple. She was Peter Parker's girlfriend, she died. That's exactly it. Gwen became iconic because of her death, not because of her characterization. Mary Jane, on the other hand, had a life outside Peter. She had flaws, trauma, agency, and long-term character development. The book itself actually got way more interesting when she got added to the picture. I was on a Spider-Man binge. I was like, wait, maybe she's actually that girl. Maybe I had the wrong opinion in my head this entire time. Maybe I was just listening to people who never read comics and were only fans of Gwen in Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. And in fact, she did have a lot of MJ traits in those movies. Mary Jane's entire character, just like Peter, is about masks. She pretends to be carefree to avoid responsibility at one point, and then Peter pretends to be normal to survive responsibility. They unmask together. Their presence helps each other. Mary Jane supported Peter for decades. They were married. She understood that Spider-Man wasn't just a hobby, it was who he was. Gwen received strong characterization, but it was largely in the last 10 years, through Ultimate Spider-Man, through Spider-Gwen, who isn't even Peter Parker's love interest. Modern adaptations boosting Gwen doesn't erase history, it just highlights how thin her original characterization was. Now onto the big blue Boy Scout himself, Superman and Supergirl. This one is going to be a double whammy. Some people believe that they should represent American values. In this take, it sounds respectful and proper on paper, which is why it's so dangerous, right? The idea of Superman, and by extension Supergirl, should embody America, that he's a symbol of American values, American power, American moral authority. And while Superman was created in America, that has never been the same thing as being created for America. Superman has said explicitly multiple times across the mythos that he is for the people, not nations. He doesn't serve borders, he doesn't answer to flags, he answers to suffering. That distinction is what matters. When Superman renounced his US citizenship, it wasn't some edgy political statement, it was a character-consistent decision. He realized that being legally tied to any single one government compromised his ability to act for the oppressed globally. If Superman is perceived as an extension of American power, then every intervention becomes imperial by default, right? And Clark refuses to be used that way. Superman is an immigrant, so is Kara. Their story isn't about nationalism, it's about moral responsibility without ownership. They don't represent American values, they represent human ones. Sometimes those values directly conflict with each other, and other times it overlaps with what America is doing at any given moment. Pretending otherwise isn't patriotism, it's flattening a character into propaganda. Yes, Clark loves America, but in particular the people within the country, not the systems itself. And even Kara, she has less of a reason to be patriotic. She lived on Krypton for like 14, 15, 13 years, and she has less of a connection to Earth. She is more a child of Krypton than planet Earth itself. Clark is the opposite, but he isn't somebody who believes wholeheartedly that the government, that America, is always in the right. He may be naive, but that doesn't mean that he's stupid. He realizes the shortcomings of his city, of his country, and other places around the world. That doesn't stop him from saving the day or being a symbol of hope. And speaking of hope, that isn't his entire character. Hope Core is a problem. Yes, while this is well-intentioned, people want him to be inspirational, comforting, pure, and he can be all of those things, but when hope becomes the only lens through which Superman is viewed, he stops being a character and turns into a motivational speaker. Superman is not perfect, and pretending that he is actively strips him of what makes him human, and Kryptonian for that matter. Clark struggles with hubris, not arrogance, but certainty. He knows he's the most powerful person in the room, and that knowledge can affect his judgment. Sometimes he steps in not because it's right, but because he believes he can handle it better than anyone else. That confidence can isolate him from other heroes and lead him to take on problems that aren't actually his to solve. His optimism can make him indecisive. Superman wants everybody to be saved. He wants the perfect outcome, and that desire can paralyze him when faced with situations where there is no clean solution. Accepting that even a godlike figure can't save everyone is one of the hardest lessons, and one he has to relearn consistently. Clark, as I've said before, can be naive. He trusts people. His belief that goodness will prevail can be exploited. Lex Luthor doesn't beat Superman by being stronger, he beats him by being smarter, more patient, and more cynical. Superman's belief that he can't be tricked is often exactly how he gets tricked. And then there's restraint to the point of self-sabotage. Superman limits himself consistently, sometimes intellectually, but mostly in terms of power. He doesn't explore his powers in the way that somebody like the Flash does as well, and not because he can't, but because he's afraid of what that knowledge might turn him into. Sometimes, he chooses not to know everything. He turns down the volume on his senses. He avoids digging into secrets because he understands that omniscience would destroy trust. That isn't weakness, that's restraint. But restraint comes with consequences. Superman being flawed is not a bug in the character, it's the point. Hope only matters when it's chosen in spite of doubt, fear, limitation, and loneliness. Strip those away, and all you're left with is a symbol and not a man. Diana Prince. A lot of people like to say that she doesn't belong on the Mount Rushmore, and right now this is going to be a huge glaze session for Diana. Real quick, pause. But because of the fact that this take has gained so much traction, it tells me that a lot of people just don't understand her. There's been this weird recent push to argue that Wonder Woman doesn't belong on the Mount Rushmore, and that characters like Hulk and Wolverine deserve that spot instead. And I need people to understand something very clearly. This isn't a close debate, and this isn't even the same category of conversation. Wonder Woman is not just important, she is foundational. Diana is the first modern female superhero, not one of the first, the first. Every major female superhero that comes after her exists because Wonder Woman was there to prove the concept. Supergirl, Storm, Captain Marvel, Jean Grey, even characters that don't look like her structurally are responding to the space that she carved out. You don't get women leading books, teams, or entire universes without Wonder Woman forcing that door open. But this doesn't even scratch the surface. Wonder Woman is one of the most important role models in fiction, period. Not just for women and girls, but for everyone. She represents a form of strength that isn't rooted in domination. She embodies compassion without weakness, power without cruelty, and a lot of people won't like this, but femininity without apology. That matters, especially in a genre that historically equated strength with brutality and emotional repression. Her entire ethos is that love is not a contradiction to that power, it's the reason power should exist at all. She was an honorary member of the United Nations. That is not subtext, that is real world and even canonical in-universe acknowledgement of her role as a global ambassador for peace. Her most iconic weapon is the lasso of truth, a tool meant to compel honesty, not obedience. And yes, that idea directly inspired the real-world development of the lie detector. A superhero weapon influencing actual science is insane legacy, I'm telling you. It deserves the glaze. Now let's talk about the cope arguments. People say that Hulk represents the unbridled strength. Get that out of here. Superman already fulfills that role, and he does it with moral clarity. Wonder Woman, if you want to talk about strength, represents controlled strength, purposeful strength, right? She's guided by wisdom and empathy from the gods. That archetype has been used endlessly across fiction. The Boys, Invincible, even Marvel themselves with Squadron Supreme. Diana's DNA is everywhere. That archetype is all over the place. Hulk is iconic, yes, but he's never functioned as a universal archetype in the same way that Wonder Woman has. He's a character study, not a pillar, and that doesn't make him any lesser. He's one of my favorite comic book characters of all time, but I don't think he's meant to be up there. The next one that people argue for is Wolverine, and here I could see a legit argument being made, because he is arguably the embodiment of the anti-hero, but even then, context does matter. Wolverine debuted in the 1970s, long after the anti-hero archetype was already established. He wasn't even introduced as a hero, he was a villain. Punisher was created around the same era and earlier and followed a similar trajectory. Like Wolverine redefined an existing lane, he didn't invent one. And let's be honest for a second, a lot of the Wolverine fandom kind of exposes the problem. When Wolverine finally gets a peak character-driven run, Greg Rucka's Wolverine for example, people complained because there wasn't enough action. Meanwhile, Rucka spent years writing one of the most definitive Wonder Woman runs ever, consistently exploring her philosophy, politics, compassion, and contradictions. That's not an accident. Wonder Woman has had one of the most consistent long-running mythologies in post-crisis DC alone. You've got George Perez redefining her foundation, William Messner Loebs, John Byrne somehow delivering solid work at DC, Phil Jimenez, Greg Rucka again, for years, Gail Simone, Alan Heinberg, Daniel Warren Johnson, Kelly Sue DeConnick delivering Historia, which is just overkill levels of mythic storytelling. Absolute Wonder Woman versus Ultimate Wolverine is not a fair fight. One isn't GOAT tier legacy redefinement, the other is just overly edgy and grimdark. Diana isn't just a character, she's a cultural milestone. Removing her from the Mount Rushmore isn't just wrong, it's historically illiterate. But what do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments down below. I'd love to hear what you think. Do you disagree? Do you agree with my takes? A lot of these can be easily found online, and you could pick out your favorites and let me know in the comments down below. When I mean favorite, I mean like your dishonorable mentions, ones that you hate to the bottom of your stomach and it always gets repeated, even though there is no reason why it should be as popular as it is as an opinion. But yeah, guys, let me know down below. Remember to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications so you know when a new video goes live. And yeah, see you all later. Take care. Deuces. Peace.